Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Preeti Kaur. Coming up in the next 1 hour. US President Trump confirms weapons already heading to Ukraine, but adds a caveat that Kyiv should not target Moscow. Ukraine says details of weapons not shared so far. Trump announces Indonesia deal after tariff threats, sets 19% tariff on Indonesia goods, Indonesia to buy 50 Boeing jets as part of the trade deal. Indian embassy in Iran issues fresh travel advisory amid rising security concerns, urges Indian nationals to avoid non-essential travel to Iran. US fighting weather vagaries on two different fronts. 2 killed in New Jersey as flash floods. Heavy rain sweep through northwestern US, causing widespread travel chaos. And wildfires continue to wreak havoc in the Grand Canyon. Sci-fi office drama Severance leads the race for the 77th Emmy Awards with a whopping 27 nominations. Batman villain spin-off series The Penguin grabs 24 slots. The White Lotus and The Studio get 23 nominations each. After a historic T20 International Series win in England, the Women in Blue take on 3 Lions in the 3-match ODI series beginning on Wednesday. US President Donald Trump has said that weapons are already being shipped to Ukraine, but he also advised Kyiv that it should not target Moscow. This statement came on Tuesday after the Kremlin charged that a new US plan to supply weapons to Kyiv, along with 3 sanction threats against Russia, would delay the peace efforts, while Trump on Monday gave Russia 50 days to strike a peace deal with Ukraine, voicing exasperation with Moscow and announcing that NATO members would supply Kyiv with new military aid. He also added that he has not spoken to President Putin since sanctions were announced.
NATO is going to pay us back for everything. In some cases, we're going to be paid back by countries of the European Union directly.
Are we starting to see those
But
payments?
we're always getting our money back in full. So we're not going to have any more investment to make. We're getting our money back in full. And if we can make a deal, that'd be great. We're saving 5,000 or 6,000 soldiers a week. They're Russian and they're Ukrainian soldiers. They're not American soldiers. And we won't have boots on the ground. But it's a shame.
Meanwhile, the European Union did not approve new Russia sanctions. It was announced by EU's foreign chief, Kaja Kallas, on Tuesday after a meeting with EU foreign ministers in Brussels. Slovakia has been blocking the EU's latest sanctions package until its concerns are addressed over a separate EU proposal to phase out imports of Russian gas by 1st of January 2028. Though EU foreign ministers welcomed US President Trump's announcement to send more weapons to Ukraine, Kallas said that ministers will discuss Russian frozen assets during an informal meeting at the end of August, as member states have very different views on the issue.
President Trump's announcement to send more weapons to Ukraine, although we would like to see US to share the burden. America and Europe are working together, and if we are working together, this can put the pressure on Putin to negotiate seriously. The only way to get Putin to end this war is to force his hand.
US President Donald Trump has said that US would impose a 19% tariff on goods from Indonesia under a new agreement with the Southeast Asian country. Hours after announcing the agreement on Truth Social, Trump told reporters that it calls for Indonesia to not charge any tariffs on American exports, while the US will impose a 19% tariff on Indonesian exports.
So we made a deal with Indonesia. I spoke to their really great president, very popular, very strong, smart. And we made the deal. We have full access to Indonesia, everything. As you know, Indonesia is very strong on copper, but we have full access to everything. We will pay no tariffs. So they are giving us access into Indonesia, which we never had. That's probably the biggest part of the deal. And the other part is they are going to pay 19%, and we are going to pay nothing. I think it's a good deal for both parties, but we will have full access into Indonesia. And we have a couple of those deals that are going to be announced.
Trump outlined an Indonesia deal similar to a pact struck recently with Vietnam, with a flat tariff on exports to the U.S. roughly double the current 10% and no levies on U.S. exports going there. It also included a penalty rate for so-called trans-shipments of goods from China via Indonesia and a commitment to buy some U.S. goods. However, the Indonesian government is yet to make any similar announcements on it. And also, as of Tuesday afternoon, Trump also said that Indonesia committed to buy $15 billion in the U.S. energy, $4.5 billion in American agricultural products, and 50 Boeing jets. On trade deal with Vietnam, Trump said that a trade agreement with Vietnam was nearly complete. Remaining in his character, Trump said that he could release details of the Vietnam trade agreement, but he did not think that it was necessary.
We have a Vietnam deal, and I would say that that deal is being pretty well set. It's pretty well set. Again, that's an opening of their country. They've opened it up. Just so you know, these were closed countries. They were wonderful people, wonderful leaders, very strong, smart leaders.
The Trump administration said that it has launched an investigation into Brazil's unfair trading practices. A statement from the U.S. Trade Representative said that it will include the Brazilian government's policies related to digital trade and electronic payment services, unfair preferential tariffs, anti-corruption interference. The investigation seeks to determine whether they are unreasonably or discriminatory and burden or restrict the U.S. commerce. Last week, U.S. President Donald Trump urged Brazilian authorities to end their prosecution of the country's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, accusing them of carrying out a witch hunt. U.S. President Trump said Tehran was hoping to engage in discussions with the United States, but he is in no rush to talk with Iran, referring to U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites last month. Washington and Tehran had been engaged.
I'm in no rush to talk. They would like to talk. I'm in no rush to talk because we obliterated their site. They'd have to start all over. In fact, it's obliterated to the point that it's not usable anymore. They'd have to pick a different mountain.
Washington and Tehran had been engaged in several rounds of negotiations seeking to strike a deal on Iran's nuclear program. However, the talks derailed due to the 12-day-long conflict between Israel and Iran. Since the end of the hostilities, both Iran and the U.S. have signaled willingness to return to the table, although Tehran has said that it will not renounce its right to the peaceful use of nuclear power. Amid escalating regional tensions and military actions in Iran, the Indian embassy in Iran urged Indian nationals to avoid non-essential travel to the country, citing recent security-related developments. The advisory, posted late evening on the embassy's official handle on X, also asked those already in Iran to remain vigilant and consider returning using available commercial and ferry services. Israel carried out strikes against Syrian government forces in southwestern Syria for a second day on Tuesday, vowing to protect the Druze minority. Syria's foreign ministry said in a statement that on Tuesday that Israel holds full responsibility for the latest attacks on southern Syria and the consequences. The ministry said it is keen to protect all Syrian citizens without exception, including the Druze minority. During a visit to the military base in West Bank's Jordan Valley on Tuesday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israeli attacks on Syria were aimed at maintaining the southwestern region of Syria as a demilitarized zone and to protect the Druze residents.
We are also operating in Syria. We have an obligation to maintain the southwestern region of Syria as a demilitarized zone bordering Israel. We will not allow a return to a situation where a second Lebanon is being established there. And we are also obligated to protect the Druze residents. We are doing this through intense operations.
In a significant diplomatic outreach, foreign ministers from across the region gathered in Tianjin for the SCO Council of Foreign Ministers meeting. The high-level talks focused on regional security, cooperation and strengthening ties among the member states. Here's more on the key highlights from the meeting.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, along with foreign ministers from Shanghai Cooperation Organization member countries, attended the SCO Council of Foreign Ministers meeting in Tianjin. Addressing the gathering, Dr. Jaishankar stressed that the three evils, terrorism, separatism and extremism, must be tackled with an uncompromising stance. Earlier, Dr. Jaishankar called on Chinese President Xi Jinping. He conveyed greetings from President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi and apprised President Xi of recent developments in India-China relations, emphasizing the importance of leadership guidance on both sides. On the sidelines of the meeting, Dr. Jaishankar also held bilateral talks with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, and Iranian Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Araghchi. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping, while meeting with the foreign ministers of member states, said the CEO is expected to play an active role in promoting global peace and development.
This year marks the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression and the World Anti-Fascist War, as well as the 80th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations. The holding of the Tianjin summit of the SCO on this important historical occasion has drawn high attention from the international community. It is widely expected that the SCO will play an active role in promoting world peace and development.
In a separate meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, Xi pledged greater support for Russia, calling for strengthened mutual backing and urging joint efforts to unite countries of the global south and promote a more just and equitable international order. As the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit is set to take place in Tianjin from August 31st to September 1st, in which heads of states are expected to participate, the world attention is now on the Asian region amidst the rising political and economic instabilities in several global pockets. Bureau Report, DD India.
You're watching DD Indian News. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, after publicly rallying against Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell for months, US President Trump suggests Secretary Scott Bessent as a candidate to replace Powell. Violent clashes erupt in Spanish town of Torre Pacheco over migration. US military to remove 2,000 National Guard troops from Los Angeles.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. After the break, you're watching DD India News Hour. US President Donald Trump said that US Justice Department should release all credible information from its probe into notorious sex criminal Jeffrey Epstein as he sought to douse a firestorm of criticism from his supporters over his handling of the case. Trump is facing the most serious split of his political career from his famously loyal right-wing base over suspicions that his administration is covering up lurid details of Epstein's crimes to protect rich and powerful figures they say are implicated. When asked about the case at the White House, Trump said that the Attorney General has handled that very well. He replied that Pam Bondi, who leads the Justice Department, handled it very well and it is going to be up to her. Trump said that whatever she thinks is credible, she should release. Jeffrey Epstein was a wealthy American financier and a notorious sex offender who was first charged with sex offenses in 2006 after the parents of a 14-year-old girl told police that he had molested their daughter at his Florida home. Due to a controversial plea deal with prosecutors that saw him jailed for just under 13 months, in July 2019, he was arrested again in New York and charged with trafficking dozens of teenage girls and engaging in sex acts with them in exchange for money. Epstein pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. On August 10, 2019, while in custody awaiting trial, authorities said that he was found dead in his prison cell after hanging himself. Skeptics allege suspicious circumstances in Epstein's death. Security cameras around his cell malfunctioned on the night he died. Many allege that Epstein files are concealed to protect rich and powerful elites. Britain's Prince Andrew and former US President Bill Clinton also linked but deny wrongdoing. US President Donald Trump said that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent could be a candidate to replace Fed Chair. We'll get to that story in a while from now, but on your screens, we're getting you the details of the case of Epstein files. Up on your screens, we have the graphics telling us why the Trump administration is under pressure. This is with regard to US President saying that US Justice Department should release all credible information from its probe into notorious sex criminal Jeffrey Epstein as he sought to douse a firestorm of criticism against his administration. Trump administration has denied the existence of any Epstein client list. Trump promised to release files related to the case while rerunning for presidentship. But since taking office, Trump has failed to deliver so. Former advisor Elon Musk claimed in June in a new deleted X post that Trump was in the Epstein files. Trump has been towing a delicate line, saying that he supports the release of any credible files related to Epstein, at the same time dismissing the case as pretty boring stuff. Republican Mike Johnson has not followed Trump's line on the issue and has instead urged the Justice Department to make public any documents linked to Epstein. Meanwhile, Democrats have seized on the rift between Trump and his party by demanding his administration publish the full evidence held by prosecutors in their case against Epstein. Getting you other news, US President Donald Trump said that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent could be a candidate to replace Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, but suggested that might not happen. Trump has rallied against Powell for months for not lowering US interest rates and has repeatedly urged him to resign. On Tuesday, Trump said that the cost overruns on a $2.5 billion renovation of the Fed's historic Washington headquarters could amount to a firing offense. Bessent, who has also played a key role in Trump's trade negotiations with a host of countries, told Bloomberg Surveillance on Tuesday that a formal process was already starting to identify a potential successor to Powell. Trump administration officials argue that a tax bill nearing passage in Congress will boost private sector investment and strengthen the U.S. economy, and insist that while tariff increase could result in a one-time bump in prices, they should not drive up inflation over the longer term. US President has announced $92 billion in energy and infrastructure deals intended to meet big tech's soaring demand for electricity to fuel the AI boom. Trump made the announcement at the inaugural Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit at Carnegie Mellon University, with much of the talk about beating China in the global AI race on Tuesday. Officials expect that by 2028, tech companies will need as much as 5 gigawatt of power for AI, enough electricity to power roughly 5 million homes. The funding will cover new data centers, power generation, grid infrastructure, AI training and apprenticeship programs. The US president launched the Stargate project in January, aimed at investing up to $500 billion in US AI infrastructure, primarily in response to growing competition with China. Trump has also reversed many policies adopted by the previous Biden administration that imposed checks on developing powerful AI algorithms and limits on exports of advanced technology on certain allied countries.
America's destiny is to dominate every industry and be the first in every technology. And that includes being the world's #1 superpower in artificial intelligence. And we are way ahead of China. I have to say, we're way ahead of China. And the plants are starting up, the construction is starting up.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered the withdrawal of 2,000 National Guard troops from Los Angeles, roughly halving the contentious deployment in the city. President Trump had ordered thousands of National Guard and hundreds of Marines into Los Angeles last month in response to protests over federal immigration sweeps. As a so-called sanctuary city with hundreds of thousands of undocumented people, Los Angeles has been in the crosshairs of the Trump administration since the Republican returned to office in January. It was the first time since 1965 that a U.S. president deployed the National Guard against the wishes of a state governor. California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom has said that troops were not necessary to address the mostly peaceful protests. And now Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass called the partial withdrawal of federal troops from the city as an important victory. Despite legal challenges, a U.S. appeals court let Trump retain control of California's National Guard. The Pentagon has defended the deployment, saying safeguarding ICE agents ensures they can do their jobs. About 2,000 Guard members and 700 Marines remain under federal control. Bass argued that the presence was never needed and said that Los Angeles had been used as a political test case. She also condemned the aggressive nature of the raids and called for a full withdrawal of remaining troops and Marines.
Here to say that we've had an important victory. I think because Los Angeles stood strong, because we understood what it meant that the federal government came in and seized power away from our governor regarding the deployment of the National Guard and inappropriately sent the National Guard here when they were not needed. The administration has finally understood that they need to withdraw the troops.
Special Forces personnel from Panama and the United States are holding military training exercises aimed at defending the interoceanic canal and other strategic infrastructure in the Central American nation. The drills involve air, land and maritime operations as part of the first phase of the annual Panamax Alpha 2025 exercise. The training brings together special agents from Panama's police forces alongside troops from the U.S. Southern Command's Joint Task Force Bravo. This initial phase focuses on training and preparing Panamanian agents for Phase 2 of the Panamax exercise, which will involve actual execution of operations scheduled for September. The current exercises follow similar U.S. military drills conducted in Panama last month to protect the interoceanic waterway, part of a bilateral agreement signed in April between the two countries. A prosecutor asked Brazil's Supreme Court to find ex-President Jair Bolsonaro guilty of plotting a coup in closing arguments after a trial that saw U.S. President Trump try to intervene on behalf of his right-wing ally. Bolsonaro is accused of seeking to overturn the 2022 election won by his left-wing opponent, current President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The prosecution told the court that former army officer Bolsonaro and 7 others were guilty of participating in armed criminal association and had sought to violently overthrow the democratic order. After the defense presents its closing arguments, a 5-justice panel will decide the fate of the ex-president. If found guilty, Bolsonaro and his co-defendants could face up to 40 years in prison. It's day 5 of the violent protests in the Spanish town of Torre Pacheco, where tensions erupted after a local man was attacked allegedly by 3 young Moroccan migrants. The incident led to several nights of violent clashes between far-right groups and North African residents. Amid fears of rising xenophobia, authorities deployed over 120 officers to keep order during the protests. 14 people have been detained and the main suspect in the assault was arrested in northern Spain. The unrest is among the worst Spain has seen in recent years, tied to illegal migration concerns. Britain set up a secret scheme to bring thousands of Afghans to the UK after their personal details were disclosed in one of the country's worst ever data breaches. The leak by the Ministry of Defence in early 2022 and the secret relocation program was subject to a so-called super injunction preventing the media reporting what happened, which was lifted on Tuesday by a court. British Defence Minister John Healey apologised for the leak, which included details about members of parliament and senior military officers who supported applications to help Afghan soldiers who worked with the British military and their families relocate to the UK. The incident ranks among the worst security breaches in modern British history because of the cost and risk posed to the lives of thousands of Afghans. Healey said that about 4,500 Afghans and their family members have been relocated or were on their way to Britain under the previously secret scheme. But he added that no one else from Afghanistan would be offered asylum because of the data leak. More than 300 electric buses were deployed in the Chilean capital of Santiago and the surrounding areas on Tuesday as part of a government bid to modernize public transport and reduce carbon emission. President Gabriel Boric and Environment Minister Maisa Rojas led the ceremony, marking a major step towards cleaner travel. Rojas called it a proof of Chile's efforts to fight climate change and meet its goal of zero carbon emissions by 2050. By March 2026, Chile plans to add 1,800 more electric buses. The project is expected to improve daily commutes for over 5.8 million people across the region. Minister for Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation of Nepal, Deepak Khadka, has urged the private sector not to be alarmed by government's plans to introduce new bills related to energy sector. According to the 23rd Annual General Assembly of the Independent Power Producers Association of Nepal in Kathmandu on Tuesday, the minister assured that the government is ready to address legitimate concerns of the private sector and revise laws through discussion. Emphasizing the need for time-related legislation, Minister Khadka clarified that there is no reason to panic over new laws as amendments and revisions remain open. Nepalese Congress President and former Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deuba also highlighted the role of the private sector in creating an energy sector free of load-shedding problem. No longer confined to sci-fi concepts or blockbuster movies, aerial rides may soon become a reality. Flying taxis are coming to Britain sooner than we thought. A UK-based firm plans to roll out a piloted flying taxi by 2028. The aircraft, named VX4, will run on electricity and is expected to operate at a price point similar to popular taxi services. Its parent company, Vertical Aerospace, based in Bristol, is leading the production. Chief Test Pilot Simon Davies praised the strong demand and impressive capabilities of the aircraft. Nomination list for the 2025 Emmy Awards, airing on September 14th, has been announced. Severance dominates the 77th Emmy Awards nominations with a record-breaking 27 nods, leading to a lineup packed with genre giants. HBO's The Penguin, featuring Batman's notorious villain, snags 24 slots, while The White Lotus and The Studio follow with 23 each. Streaming platforms rule the charts as innovation and bold storytelling take the center stage. From satire to sci-fi, this year's Emmys promise a thrilling celebration of television's evolving landscape. You're watching DD India News Hour. We're heading for a short break, but after the break, Indian government expresses sharp denunciation on demolition of a house in Bangladesh linked to 3 generations of Bengal's most respected authors. The Unique Identification Authority of India, UIDAI, urges parents to complete mandatory biometric update for children aged 7 and above. Vibrant Rath Yatra to commemorate Lord Jagannath's journey brings colour, kirtan and culture to the streets of Amsterdam. Welcome back after the break. You're watching DD Indian News Hour. A quick relook at the top stories now. US President Trump confirms weapons already heading to Ukraine, but adds a caveat that Kyiv should not target Moscow. Ukraine says details of weapons not shared so far. Trump announces Indonesia deal after tariff threats, sets 19% tariff on Indonesia goods, Indonesia to buy 50 Boeing jets as part of the trade deal. Indian embassy in Iran issues fresh travel advisory and rising security concerns, urges Indian nationals to avoid non-essential travel to Iran. US fighting weather vagaries on two different fronts. 2 killed in New Jersey as flash floods. Heavy rain sweep through northwestern US, causing widespread travel chaos. Wildfires continue to wreak havoc in the Grand Canyon. Sci-fi office drama Severance leads the race for 77th Emmy Awards with a whopping 27 nominations. Batman villain spin-off series The Penguin grabs 24 slots. The White Lotus and The Studio get 23 nominations each. After a historic T20 International Series win in England, the Women in Blue take on the Three Lions in the 3-match ODI series beginning on Wednesday. A house in Bangladesh linked to 3 generations of Bengal's most respected literary and cultural figures is being demolished, drawing sharp criticism and concerns from the Indian government. The Indian government stepped in and volunteered to help in repair and reconstruction of the property. In a statement, the Ministry of External Affairs reminded the interim government of the iconic status of the race in the shared cultural history of the subcontinent. The Ministry of External Affairs expressed regret over the demolition, noting that the house is a landmark tied closely to the Bangla cultural renaissance. It said that the building could instead be restored and converted into a literature museum celebrating shared heritage. The ministry also said that the Government of India would be ready to offer support if such a plan is considered. The property, presently owned by the Government of Bangladesh, is in a state of disrepair. All right, our correspondent Naval Singh Parmar is joining us on phone line. Naval Singh, we've just given a broad outline of how India has taken to the demolition of the house of Satyajit Ray in Bangladesh. You get us more details. Do we see any response coming in from the Bangladesh government?
The house we are talking is an iconic building, and it is related to the most renowned literary family of Bangladesh and undivided Bengal, and that is Roy Chaudhary or Roy family. The grandfather of Satyajit Ray, Upendra Kishore Roy Chaudhary, was also a famous literary person, and his father Sukumar Ray is considered one of the finest poet in Bangla literature. So this house have an immense historical value, and there are many voices from within Bangladesh is coming that this should be preserved, and historical importance of the house can be maintained with the like as India suggested that it could have been make a museum or literary club for the people of Bangladesh, and so the sad history of undivided Bengal can be preserved. There are many film personality we are aware about them, like Rutvik Ghatak, Suchitra Suchitra Sen, Brunal Sen, and S.D. Burman. They were having a very close link with the Bangladesh, and like Satyajit S.D. Burman's house in Komilla, Satyajit Ray's house, ancestral house in Memon Singh divisional headquarters of the Memon Singh division, then the Suchitra Sen's house in Pabna, which is near to Padda River, Padda, or we can say Ganga River in Bangladesh. At the same time, Mrunal Sen's house in Faridpur, and Rutvik Ghatak house in Rajshahi. All cities are in Bangladesh, and they have a very rich history here in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh government, time and again, India and Indian people have raised their voice to have a mechanism to preserve the sad legacy of Indian figure who have contributed immensely in the Renaissance and the film and art and all the faculties in of the arts from Bangladesh.
All right, Naval Singh, thank you so much for joining in with those details. And back home in Uttarakhand, 8 people were killed and 5 were injured when a jeep fell into a deep gorge in Pithoragarh on Tuesday. Expressing grief over the incident, Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced 2 lakh rupees ex gratia for the deceased and 50,000 rupees for the injured individuals. In a post on social media platform X, the Prime Minister's office stated, and I quote, "Saddened by the loss of lives due to the road accident in Pithoragarh, Uttarakhand. Condolences to those who have lost their loved ones in the mishap. May the injured recover soon. An ex gratia of rupees 2 lakh from Prime Minister's Relief Fund would be given to the next of the kin of each deceased, and the injured would be given 50,000 rupees." And I unquote. The Unique Identification Authority of India, UIDAI, has urged parents and guardians to complete mandatory biometric update for children aged 7 and above. UIDAI, in a statement, has emphasized the importance of completing the mandatory biometric update for children who have reached the age of 7 but have not yet updated their biometrics in Aadhaar. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology said that under the current guidelines, a child below 5 years of age does not have to provide fingerprints or iris scans due to developmental reasons. It added that once the child turns 5, these biometrics must be updated, and the process is free of charge if completed between the ages of 5 and 7. If the mandatory biometric update is not completed even after 7 years of age, the Aadhaar number may be deactivated as per the existing rules. UIDAI has also started sending SMS messages to the mobile numbers registered in the Aadhaar of such children for completing the mandatory biometric update exercise. Let's get you some weather updates from across the globe. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy has declared a state of emergency after torrential rainfall and flash flooding wreaked havoc across the state. The National Weather Service issued flash flood warnings statewide as multiple regions, including Union County, faced extreme weather impacts. The intense rainfall caused widespread travel disruption across the region's airports, highways and railways. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy said that 2 people died in Plainfield when their vehicle was swept away by floodwaters.
We had some serious weather that hit us last night. And we had, sadly, 2 fatalities in Plainfield and a car that was swept away. I think Cedar Brook Park, Sean. And I just came from Berkeley Heights in Union County. I'd say Union County and Somerset County had the biggest impact. A whole number of communities, a significant amount of damage, which we're still assessing. The White House has reached out. You have to meet certain bogeys historically in terms of the federal support, and we're assessing that as we speak. We declared a state of emergency last night, which I think was the right call for the entire state, because while the most severe weather was in and around Union and Somerset counties, there was weather up and down the state, as I'm sure you all experienced. And stay tuned. We'll have a better sense of, God willing, there's no more fatalities that we don't know about. We'll have a better sense of the damages over the next 48 hours, and we'll make sure we keep folks posted. But please keep the families of those loved ones in your prayers, of those who lost their lives, as well as folks who may be displaced from homes.
The ongoing Dragon Bravo fire in northwestern Arizona is one of the 2 fires that have been burning the north rim of the Grand Canyon since July 4th. A wildfire in Tinder Drive forest of the north rim of the Grand Canyon grew around 50% on Tuesday after it destroyed dozens of buildings, prompting public outrage that it was left to burn for a week before firefighters tried to fully extinguish it. A spokesperson for the incident team said the so-called Dragon Bravo fire swelled to 8,570 acres after burning the historic Grand Canyon Lodge and 70 other structures, including tourist cabins and park staff housing over the weekend. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs has demanded an independent investigation into why National Park Service staff let the fire burn during the driest time of the summer in a botched attempt to reduce wildfire risks and improve forest health. In Colorado, wildfire has rapidly grown to engulf nearly 4,000 acres, prompting evacuations across multiple counties on Tuesday. Lightning strikes on July 10th ignited the wildfire on the south rim of the Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park, the National Park Service said on its website. The park has been evacuated of visitors and staff and remains closed. Multiple wildfires are also burning across western Colorado, prompting evacuations, road closures, and a statewide disaster declaration. Governor Jack Police activated emergency response plans on Sunday as crew battled 5 major blazes, all sparked by lightning strikes last week. India has recorded above normal rainfall so far this monsoon season, with the Met Department estimating cumulative precipitation at 109% of the long period average, indicative of average rainfall as of July 14th. This above normal rainfall is expected to continue, with the IMD forecasting 106% of LPA average rainfall for the remainder of July. The overall healthy rainfall has significantly boosted agricultural activity. According to data from the Ministry of Agriculture, Kharif crop sowing is up by 6.6% year-on-year, led by strong growth in pulses, cereals and rice cultivation. So far, 59.8 million hectares have been sown as compared to 56.1 million hectares during the same period last year. The heavy rains during the monsoon season have affected normal life and property in parts of North Indian state of Himachal Pradesh. According to the State Disaster Management Authority, over 100 people have lost their lives in rain-related incidents between June 20th and July 15th. 184 people injured in floods, cloudburst and landslides, while 35 people are still missing. The total loss figures has reached 7,860 million rupees. The Indian Council of Agricultural Research was celebrating its 97th Foundation Day on 16th of July. ICAR was established on this day in 1929 with the objective of conducting research in agriculture, animal husbandry, dairy, fisheries and related technologies. Watch this special report to know about ICAR's special achievements.
Indian Council of Agricultural Research is one of the largest national agricultural research systems in the world, with 113 ICAR institutes and 74 agricultural universities spread across the country. It has played a major role in the Green Revolution and subsequent developments in agriculture in India through its robust research and technological advancements, leading to many-fold increase in food grain production, horticultural crops, fish and milk production in the country from 1950-51 to 2024. With technology and research in agriculture, India is the major exporter of rice in the world with production of 149.1 million tons of rice. India ranks first in milk production with 239.30 million tons and ranks second in the world in wheat and fish production. Over 400 improved varieties of seeds have been released in animal husbandry, responsible for conservation of various breeds of cows, has developed better breeds of Catla, Labio, Rohita in fisheries, established a strong network of Kisan Call Center, Kisan Mobile App and Krishi Vigyan Centers. For agriculture and research, ICAR exercises academic control of more than 75 agricultural universities in India. These universities offer degrees in fields like agriculture, horticulture, fisheries and more. ICAR, one of the largest national agricultural research organizations in the world, working in collaboration with international organizations like FAO, CJIAR, IRRI, Philippines, CIMMYT, Mexico. ICAR has collaborative agreements with 40 plus countries of the world on agricultural technology, seed production and more. Focused on organic farming, linked farmers and grain markets with PM Kisan, e-Naam, promoting agri-startups, promoting smart farming research techniques using AI. While making India self-sufficient in food grain production, animal husbandry and fisheries, ICAR is not only a nation's pride, but has also become a symbol of India's scientific, agricultural power at the global level. With inputs from Anuj Yadav, DD India.
Vibrant sounds of kirtan and the rhythm of traditional drums echoed through the streets of Amsterdam. The annual Rath Yatra festival, a centuries-old Indian celebration, brought a colourful procession to the heart of the city. Our correspondent Mark Limburg was there to capture how this ancient tradition continues to thrive.
Today we're in central Amsterdam, one of the most iconic locations in the Netherlands, for an event that brings ancient Indian tradition into the heart of Europe. This is Rath Yatra, also known as the Festival of the Chariots. A spiritual celebration that originates centuries ago in the Indian city of Puri, now held in cities around the world, and now here in Amsterdam. Accompanied by the chanting of sacred mantras and traditional Indian music and dance, the atmosphere is colorful and uplifting, but also deeply meaningful to those who take part.
Lord Krishna came to existence, and that's how we celebrate Lord Jagannath Puri Yatra over there. Yes.
In a city known for its openness and diversity, events like Rath Yatra offer a glimpse into the global reach of Indian spirituality and how timeless traditions find new expressions far from home.
This is all offered to Lord Jagannath, and so it's prasadam, that means mercy. So we give it to the people, so then they have mercy from God Himself. So that is transcendental food, you know, so it's wonderful.
Mark Limburg reporting for DD India in Amsterdam, the Netherlands.
From here we turn focus to business updates. India's overall exports rose by nearly 6% in the first quarter of the current financial year, reaching more than $210 billion as compared to $198.52 billion in the same period of the last financial year. The growth comes despite global trade uncertainties, including disruptions around the Strait of Hormuz. India's Commerce and Industry Ministry said that both merchandise and services exports registered growth in the April to June 2025 period. The ministry said that if the current trend sustains, India could surpass last year's overall export performance. Also, the country's imports registered a decline by 3.71% to $53.92 billion in June, as against $56 billion in the last year. The ministry also informed that the trade deficit of the country stood at $18.78 billion in June this year. French Prime Minister Prasar Bharati proposed scrapping 2 public holidays and freezing most public spending as part of a €43.8 billion budget squeeze he had outlined on Tuesday. Bharati's plan involved freezing welfare spending and tax brackets in 2026 at 2025 levels, not even adjusting for inflation, which was immediately criticized by left-wing and far-right politicians. Defense spending, however, will increase. France saw its budget deficit hit 5.8% of gross domestic product last year, nearly double the official EU limit of 3% of the GDP, as a political crisis left 4 successive governments paralyzed and incapable of tackling an unexpected drop in tax income and surge in spending for a second year. The welfare spending freeze will likely be as unpopular for many voters as scrapping 2 public holidays, possibly Easter Monday and May 8th, which commemorates the end of the Second World War in Europe. British Prime Minister Rachel Reeves pledged on Tuesday to ease regulation further and announced measures to boost the finance sector, including reforming requirements for banks to separate retail and investment banking activities and a plan to get more savers investing in stocks. Under pressure to get lackluster economic growth going, Reeves doubled down on her message since Labour came to power last year that post-financial crisis regulation is stifling growth and needs to be pared back. She promised meaningful reform of bank ringed fencing, rules designed to shield depositors from volatile investment banking. She also pledged simpler regulatory approvals for smaller financial companies and confirmed an easing of access to mortgages.
The UK economy is enhanced by its outward-facing approach. And this year, we have built on that with our new trade deals. A trade deal with the United States, where we were the first country to sign a deal so that British businesses are better protected against tariffs, and where we have worked with our G7 colleagues to avert new taxes.
Large US banks reported results that topped estimates on Tuesday as executives pointed to American economic resilience and said that businesses were adapting to tariff uncertainty. Executives from JP Morgan Chase and Citigroup described US consumers as still fundamentally in good shape despite continued risks to the outlook. Both banks now see a lower risk of recession as compared with April when they last reported the results. Top officials with the banks also characterized clients as less frazzled by President Donald Trump constantly changing trade policy as compared with April when the financial markets were in turmoil. In the last week alone, Trump had threatened deep tariffs on some 24 countries and had spoken of new levies on copper and pharmaceuticals. Announcements that many market watchers remain skeptical will be enacted in light of previous tariff pivots by the US president. NVIDIA plans to resume sales of its H20 AI chips to China after receiving assurances from the US government that export licenses will be granted. According to Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, this deal is part of US negotiations on rare earths. This decision comes after a meeting between NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang and President Donald Trump as part of a trade deal involving rare earths. The company will file applications to resume sales of its H20 graphics processing unit in China. The planned resumption is a reversal of an export restriction imposed in April that has drawn criticism from US legislators, citing national security concerns and potential inconsistencies with the administration's stance on export controls for China. China is a crucial market for NVIDIA, generating $17 billion in revenue in the fiscal year ending January 26, or 13% of total sales. Rival AI chip maker AMD also plans to resume shipments of its MI308 chips to China once licenses are approved. After updates from the world of business, we now turn to sports. A confident Indian women's team will clash with England in the 3-match ODI series beginning on Wednesday. The women in blue made history by winning their first ever T20 international series against England last week. With the ODI World Cup on the horizon, Harmanpreet Kaur-led Team India will be keen to fine-tune their 50-over game. India won their last 2 ODI assignments in May. An ODI series win would further boost their preparations for the global showpiece. Meanwhile, England will be bolstered by the return of skipper Nat Sciver-Brunt and world number 1 ODI bowler Sophie Ecclestone, who have recovered from injuries. King Charles met members of the Indian men's and women's cricket teams at the Clarence House in London on Tuesday. King Charles interacted with Indian captain Shubman Gill, vice captain Rishabh Pant, Jasprit Bumrah and head coach Gautam Gambhir. The King discussed England's thrilling victory over India in the 3rd test at the home of cricket, Lords. England have taken a 2-1 lead in the 5-match series. The 4th test is set to kick off at Old Trafford on July 23rd.
Got out was quite unfortunate. The ball rolling on the stumps, and he was just asking us how did we feel after that, and we told him it was an unfortunate match for us. Could have gone either ways, but hopefully we'll have better luck in the next both the next game.
Organizers of the Winter Olympics 2026 have unveiled medals that will be awarded to the athletes during the Games next year. The medals have the traditional Olympic 5-ring symbol on one side with an inscription on the reverse that details the event and commemorates the venue. They were presented at a ceremony in Venice that featured two celebrated retired Italian athletes, swimmer Federica Pellegrini and Francesca Porcelletto. Milan and the town of Cortina d'Ampezzo are the main hosts of the Games, which will start from February 6th next year.
Medal, but at the same time it's really elegant, classic, and the idea of these two halves, yes, connected each other with, of course, the symbol of the Games, Olympic and Paralympic.
That's it in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. This app is available on both Android and iOS platforms, and you can download the respective QR codes. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Preeti Kaur signing off, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.